We are live talking Ourlads football, and that's a little bit of college football here on our show today as we get you ready for the 2025 NFL draft a little early, but we're also getting you ready for the 2024 college football season. And this is our final show as far as this particular format that we've had for the past couple of months, where we've gone through every conference in college football. We've been through the Power 5 or 4, whatever you want to call it, the Group of 5. And actually, this is part of the Group of 5 because we're going to talk a little bit of those couple of Pac-10 teams. We've got some Group of 5 talk, and we also have some FCS talk and Division 2 and 3 talk. So this is the best of the rest. We're talking defense this week. If you were interested in what we talked about last week, you could check it out, of course, on demand on your Ourlads football channel. Please subscribe here if you enjoy these videos and you want to learn more about the scouting industry in professional football, as well as, of course, everything that goes on regarding scouting and getting ready for the draft. And, of course, just watching football every Saturday this season in college football. All right, so our couple of big scouts here on our channel and our network here joining us once again, John Cooper and Hayden Russell. So, guys, let's talk some defense now. And let's talk a little bit of defense up front. And we're going to start, first of all, I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here and get Hayden on board first and talk edges. And speaking of non-FBS football, Central Arkansas is going to come into play. I'm not sure how many times we're going to talk Central Arkansas football here on the channel, but this is as good a time as any. David Walker is going to be the player that you would like to zero in on, Hayden. So tell us a little bit about your Central Arkansas football player.
Yeah, probably won't hear a whole lot about Central Arkansas. One thing I will say about them is they have a really unique field. They have a purple and black field. It goes 5 by 5 yards. Definitely got to check it out online if you ever have an opportunity, or go see it in person if you ever have that chance. David Walker, I mean, if you've listened to these shows in the past, I love a good story. David Walker continues to make his name known in college football. He was a 3-sport athlete in high school before committing to Division II, Southern Arkansas. And then in 2021, he amassed 19 and a half tackles for loss, 8 sacks, and then decided from then on he was going to move on up to the Division I level, came over to Central Arkansas, which is where he's at now. And over his first 2 years at Central Arkansas, he was named the Conference Defensive Player of the Year in both seasons. He was a 2-time All-American. He tied the school record for sacks in a game. He had 3.5 sacks in a game, and he broke the school record for tackles for loss in a game with 6.5. And across those 2 seasons, he amassed a total of 123 tackles, 40 tackles for loss, 20.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. So when I saw those numbers, he was a player that I had to check out. Wasn't disappointed. He's not just doing this against FCS level teams either. He's shown flashes against some real FBS programs too. He showed some against Ole Miss. They played Oklahoma State, did well in both of those games. And it's safe to say he's a player that we'll be watching closely over here at Ourlads. He's 6'2", 260 pounds on their website. He's an explosive athlete who will fire off the ball. He plays at the low pad level. Successful in pass rush. He showed a violent hand swipe and a number of other moves to win. He possesses a blend of power and explosiveness to squeeze his way into gaps to make tackles in the backfield. He's also a high-effort player who's going to make plays downfield, and he wants to impact every single play. However, he does not possess the length that you're looking for a dominant edge defender at the next level. I know we've talked about this in past shows. Coach Coop's big thing is always wingspan. He's not going to be that guy that flashes with the wingspan. He also lacks ideal bend off of the edge and wins more consistently on the interior. He plays 4-eye typically for Central Arkansas. That's where he gets a lot of his pressure from. With that said, the former Division II prospect is sure to be one of the top players in the FCS once again this coming season.
Are you looking for something out of him that's going to blow your mind and say, hey, I think this guy's got a shot?
You're saying just from a trait standpoint?
Yeah. Is it something that's going to yeah, because obviously you would think a player at this level does have to have that really one impactful trait, as you would say. So is there something that you're looking for?
Sure.
Speed, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're looking at the FCS level, number one, obviously you're looking for a player that's going to dominate their opposition. He's a guy that does that on a game-to-game basis. He has really incredible athleticism, great burst. There's a lot to like about his game. And like I said, if you're looking for a pass rusher, maybe a guy early on that's coming in, in sub packages, maybe playing 10 to 15 plays a game, or he's just focusing on rushing the passer, he's going to be your type of guy.
All right. So that's going to get us started here talking about the edge department. And now we're going to move over to defensive tackle, John. And let's talk about a few players here because we do have a handful of guys to talk about. So let's first of all, hey, it's good to talk UConn football, isn't it? Jim Mora Jr.
Yep.
If anybody can get that program going, I think Jim Mora Jr. can do it. They already started to show some signs last year. So Galani Stafford is the player that you would like to talk about. What do you like about this kid?
Well, he's an interesting player for a lot of reasons. He reminds me of Patrick Ricard. When he came out, University of Maine, he was a big defensive tackle, thick, not the long arm guy you want, but a real stud run stuffer. And he ended up becoming a NFL fullback. Well, the interesting thing about Galani Stafford is he also is a fullback, and he not only is a blocking back, but he also carried the ball 15 times and led the team with 6 rushing touchdowns. So he's a defensive tackle plus fullback. And there's a clip, if you can find it online, of him catching a pass out of the backfield and taking off for 25 yards. This kid is a really good athlete. He's only 6 foot tall, just a little shade over 6 foot, 311 pounds. He transferred from Youngstown State before the 2022 season. He played 25 games for UConn. He started 12 games on the defensive line, 40 tackles, 28 solo, and 8 for a loss. A couple of fumble recoveries, too. He's a very powerful interior defender with a decent first step and a very powerful punch. He can attack gaps or play 2-gap. I mean, he's not the greatest down-the-line sprinter, but he's not bad. He's got good lateral movement that he can make plays along the line. He plays with excellent leverage, and he can forklift offensive linemen to hold the point of attack. Very tough to move. Been productive with tackles for a loss. He's more of a push-the-pocket defender than escape and get to the quarterback. Height is a definite disadvantage, but he could have a role as a rotational run stuffer as a nose tackle. And I could see him being that guy that plays in that 3-4 defense as a 1 technique, a 0 technique, and plays a little bit of 2-eye possibly depending upon what they're doing situationally. He might play 15 to 20 to 25 snaps a game, and he could also be a blocking fullback. I really believe that he could do that role. I've watched him. UConn lines up in that I formation, and is he going to carry the ball, or is he going to block, or is he going to release out on a play-action pass? He was a little bit of a weapon this past season at UConn, so it's going to be interesting to see what he does this year. But he's a draftable player. Looking at starting to stack these defensive tackles, I think I definitely see him as a third day pick, but a guy that should get drafted, and I believe he will find a role on a team.
All right, Hayden, you're going Mountain West football, and you got a couple of guys there who are making it very difficult to every week. We always have a hard time with a couple of these guys trying to figure out how to pronounce their names. But we got a couple of guys from Wyoming and Air Force. So, I went over their information, their stats, and actually they're pretty impressive. The kid from Wyoming, is it Bertigo? Jordan
Bertigo is not going to be a guy that I'll talk about today. I'm going to turn my focus more towards Peyton Zdro instead from Air Force.
Zdro. All right. Yeah. Zdro, actually. Yeah. Talk about him because he's not a big guy, but in his first 2 years, he's got a combined 62 tackles, 10 sacks, 16 tackles for loss. So he's very productive on an excellent Air Force defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Peyton Zdro was meant to play play for Air Force since he was a kid. I mean, his parents both graduated from the Air Force Academy, and he has the athletic pedigree to play for such a prestigious school. In high school, he was a 3-time All-State selection. He was first-team All-League on both sides of the ball. During those 3 years, he won a state championship, and he also lettered in baseball as well. And that success transferred over to the college level quickly, where he became a full-time starter his sophomore year in 2022, and he's been nothing short of a success since. Over the past 2 seasons, I mean, as you said, his statistics speak for themselves: 16 and a half tackles for loss, 10 sacks. He's been nothing but a problem for opposing teams in the Mountain West. He's listed at 6 feet tall. ESPN lists his weight as 275 pounds. They didn't list it on the website over at Air Force, so had to go find it over there. At least that's what they say on the website. He typically aligns as the nose tackle for Air Force. He plays head up on the center and odd fronts. He'll shift out to a 2-eye and even fronts, but he'll really play all over the defensive line for him. I've seen a few plays where he played some 3-tech, but typically the nose tackle for their defense. This won't be his natural position at the next level. I think he's going to be more of a 3-tech at the next level, especially if you're looking at 275 pounds. Going to be really tough at the next level to be someone that's going to clog some holes unless you can put some real weight on him. But as you would expect from someone playing for Air Force, he's willing to do whatever needed to help the team win games. He's powerful on engagement. He walks linemen back into the backfield regularly. He's got quick feet with precise movements on the snap and slants in the gaps with notable agility. I would like to see him anchor better against some solo blocks, being able to, root into the ground with low pad level against double teams. Oftentimes gets pushed off the ball regularly. Also needs to find more ways to contribute in pass rush, especially if he is bumping outside of 3-tech, like we talked about. High effort player who gets a lot of his pass rush production from that high effort on the interior, but bumping out to 3-tech at the next level. Going to have to polish some things up. But he reminds me loosely of Mekhi Wingo coming out of LSU from this last season. Obviously, he's not playing in the SEC, but from like a trait standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint, a lot of similarities. But he is someone I'm going to keep an eye on for this coming season.
By the way, speaking of Bertigo, what do you think about this kid, John? Because I'm really sad to see Craig Bowl leave. What an incredible run he had at Wyoming. To produce players like Josh Allen, to say the least, and some other really fine players. I mean, I never remember talking about Wyoming football ever until Craig Bowl got
the guy that took over the defensive coordinator, he's a good coach. And, I have one of my former players is an assistant. He's a secondary coach and also worked with special teams, pass defense primarily, Benny Boyd. And, so he worked with both of those guys, and, they're in good hands. And everybody loved the coach you're talking about. He's really well loved, really nice guy. Pretty set in his ways in a lot of ways, but he was a solid football coach, and everybody loved him. But the program's in good hands, as far as this goes. And as far as the defensive tackle, he's kind of down the line, in terms of how he would be ranked. I mean, he's a tough kid. He moves pretty well. He's been productive, high effort player. And in a year of really, really good defensive tackles, from everything I can see, you want to see how he plays this year. He's a kid I want to watch and just see how he's going to stack up against some of these guys. Even like Hayden's guys that he talked about. He's a good player, and he's got a chance. But yet, it's a really, really good year for defensive tackles.
Yeah, the kid's about 6'4", 290. 110 tackles the last 2 years combined.
Yeah, he can move. I mean, he plays well down the line, uses his hands well. He's not the greatest athlete in the world, but he is a high effort, high motor player that he's going to give you everything he got. He's a good technician. He's a smart player. He plays with very good technique. Gets a little high once in a while, but he's got a chance. But again, great year for defensive tackles. So we'll see how he stacks up before it's over.
All right, let's talk linebackers then, John. You're going to pick one from Louisiana Lafayette. KC Osai, pretty good size, 6'1", 240. Led the team in tackles last year with 95. Actually had 63 the year before, so he's a productive player. Lafayette was a very interesting program just a couple of years ago. Of course, their coach, Napier, is now in Florida, and things aren't going all that well for him so far there. But they're making a transition at Lafayette. But what do you like about this kid, Osai?
Well, he's a brother of Joseph Osai, the Bengals edge rusher. And he was headed to Arizona initially, but changed to Louisiana, later years, or in kind of a last minute kind of thing. He's a 3-year starter. He's a big, thick prospect. He's got decent sideline to sideline speed. He's more of a downhill player. He fits inside gaps very well. He's very physical, attacking blocks. He uses his hands well. He can hold up against interior linemen and work through the trash to the ball. He's more of a thumper than a finesse player. He's a little tight hip, changing direction in line and get caught overrunning a gap. Is the one thing I noticed. But if you're in his track, he can be an extremely physical tackler. Gather, drive through tackles. Sometimes he'll get a little tall, but for the most part, he's a very fundamentally sound player. He's also been used as a blitzer. They like to stunt blitz a lot in those inside gaps with some cross blitzes and what we call swim cat. And he's shown very good ability to come off, the edge in a stunt, and a combination stunt with a defensive tackle. And he can fit gaps really well. And that was a big part of what he did. And even in rundowns, he was very effective at that. As a coverage linebacker, more of a pattern read coverage package that they use. His range appeared limited in coverage. He did flip his hips, and he was able to adjust to those crossing routes, and pass off crossers and come off and flip his hips and come to the next guy. But, as far as range, chasing those shallow crosses, to the opposite side, I'm not sure he's that kind of guy. And that's one of the reasons I think they did a lot of inside blitzing and played some cover one, at least in the film that I watched. He's most likely a rundown prospect, but as I said, he's shown some ability to play those short zones. We're going to need a further dive into him to determine just how high he could go in the draft. He's a tough kid. He's a productive kid, at that level. And he's been a 3-year starter. So, he's going to be interesting to watch. He's got the size you want for. He's got NFL size. Is he going to be a special team guy? Is he going to be a guy that can do more than, just play, 2 downs? That's the thing that's going to have to be determined, by NFL scouts, by us as we look at him, this next season. But he's an interesting prospect, and he's someone to watch.
All right, let's talk about another one of these schools that we don't get a chance to talk too much about. We're going to talk about Mount Union and Rosie Moore. Rosie Moore from Mount Union, Hayden. What do you like about this kid?
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure, well, I should say the displeasure of coaching against Rosie Moore over the past 2 seasons when I was coaching the Ohio Athletic Conference. He's been one of the most problematic players to game plan against. Now, as Coach Coop said in the last episode, projecting Division III players to the NFL is very difficult. Very few Division III guys ever have a shot to make it that far. And all of the guys that we're talking about when we talk about Division III guys are going to be pure projects at the next level. There's things that you have to see on tape if you're going to say that guy's even got a sliver of a bit of hope to make it to the next level. But if you're just looking for some fun tape to scour through at the lower levels of college football, Rosie Moore is a really fun watch. He plays for, like you said, the University of Mount Union, which if you're talking about from a Division III standpoint, has one of the best histories of sending guys to the professional ranks, if not the best history of sending guys to the professional ranks from the Division III level. Guys like Pierre Garcon, Cecil Shorts are alumni of Mount Union. This past draft, Wayne Ruby was a guy who signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars as an undrafted free agent, and Moore hopes to be the next guy in line to get a call up to an NFL roster. So I kind of cheated with this pick a little bit because Moore is actually an edge defender for Mount Union, but he's listed at 6'2", 205 pounds. So he may need to consider a move inside the linebacker if he can't add, a significant amount of weight going to the next level. But over the past 2 seasons, he's amassed 42.5 tackles for loss and 22 sacks. So the resume's there, and he's going to look to add on to those numbers in 2024. He's got exceptional burst and excellent athleticism for his level of ball. He fires off the ball like a cannon on heavy passing downs and pressures the quarterback regularly. He squeezes in between blockers with solid strength to blast the ball carrier in the backfield. And in pass rush, he can flip his hips effortlessly in corner, and he may be able to add limited pass rush value at the next level. Now, he will get destroyed in the trenches at the next level, especially if he's going to stay at 205 pounds. So that's not going to work out. But he also doesn't possess the sideline to sideline speed of a true NFL linebacker. Not to mention, obviously, with him playing edge rusher, we haven't really seen him play much off the ball. We haven't seen how he can read, how he can react from the linebacker position. But like I said, when you're looking at Division III guys, total projects, total long shots, maybe contribute early on special teams, but you're going to need to develop him, and a team's going to have to see if they want to spend the time, training him to keep him rostered or on the practice squad. But like I said, if you want some fun film to watch, I mean, he's one of the most dominant players at the Division III level. It's some fun film to watch.
All right, let's get to the defensive backfield. Wrap it up here at corner and safety. And John, let's start with one of your obscure schools. Let's talk Eastern Kentucky football with Mike Smith. So what do you like about Mike Smith?
He's a transfer from Appalachian State, where he played corner and special teams. Played 2 seasons there, and he was the thing that is interesting about him, in my opinion, is he was a dominant special teams player at App State. I saw some sub-package work as a corner, but mostly a special teamer. And he was outstanding on punt coverage, and he was really good at blocking opponents' gunners on the punt team. And that's what he was noted for. So he's going to get a job in the NFL, possibly as that special team ace that can play safety. Now, he played 11 games this past season, made 10 starts, 56 tackles, 11 pass breakups, and he had one interception. And so he's a productive player. He played, in watching film, he plays 1 and 2 high, primarily deep safety in all of Eastern Kentucky's 1 high looks. They played quite a bit of match zone where he covers an inside receiver, a solid mirror skill. Pattern read coverage is very good as he can balance multiple threats. He's a little tight in his change of direction, and it shows coming downhill when he's making tackles. He will overrun at times and barely hang on. He's a very aggressive player coming downhill, and he makes a lot of big hits and a lot of tackles. But there are some misses. He needs a little more consistency gathering and driving through tackles. As a deep safety, plays the ball extremely well and is very productive at the catch point, breaking up passes. Decent speed, he can recover if out of position. He can bring it, battling for balls, and he makes big hits and on the catch. He's a versatile player. He's got a little corner in his background. He's got good size. He's 6'1", 205. And I think his versatility and special team skills being a big plus, I think he'll find a home on an NFL team.
All right. Before I move over to Hayden, you've got a couple other guys, both in the FBS. And let's talk finally about a Pac-12, it should be a Pac-2 team. And that is this kid from Washington State, Gaskin, who we only got 1 year of FBS level football. What do you like about it?
You got it right. Yeah, I'll tell you what, the thing about it is I found some Saddleback junior college tape to watch. I don't know how it was interesting because that's where he came from. He transferred from Saddleback this past season. So he's slightly undersized, nickel safety who was a corner at Saddleback. And he had a slow start actually at Washington State, but he ended up being their nickelback. And he was an overhang player. Most I never saw in the film I watched. I didn't see anything but him playing overhang, at Washington State. He's got pretty good. The thing that's notable about him is his toughness and tackling skill. He's a complete player as he can run. He can play the run and he can cover. He's very tenacious and energetic in his approach, and an excellent feel for route combinations as a zone defender. Sudden reactions with the ball in the air. Very quick change of direction that allows him to space routes and quickly react on the delivery key. He mirrors route breaks well and is quick to adjust if the quarterback pulls the ball down and looks for an alternate. He can play man or zone. He showed excellent hard corner skill as a junior college player, and he was really, really good. I could see him having a role as a backup corner and playing nickel. I think he has got the desired physicality of an NFL nickelback without the desired size. 5'9", 5'095", 185. Decent enough speed, not a burner, probably going to be around a 4.5 guy. And, from what I'm hearing, he had an outstanding spring at Washington State, and they're really looking forward to him playing a very key role in their secondary this year. And, they're looking at him as the nickel. Whether he gets any corner reps or not, it remains to be seen. They list him as a safety, but he's a hybrid player that's undersized. Where he's going to go in the draft, if he's drafted, those are all going to be things to see. But this is a kid I like. He's the kind of player I like to watch. The kid that just plays hard and does most things well. There's not a lot of weakness in his game other than 5'0", 5', 185 for the position that they're asking him to play as a nickel. Because you got to have a degree of toughness. But there's been some other ones. Being a follower of the Ravens, there's a kid named Ardarius Washington that plays for the Ravens that is actually smaller than this kid, who is a very tough football player. And this kid reminds me of Ardarius Washington.
All right. And then you have one more kid, and that's this kid from Eastern Carolina by the name of Siobhan Revel. And, Revel, they better have a big year. Mike Houston, he's been there for a while. He had a bad year last year, so this can be a big year for Houston and the program. What do you like about Revel?
Yeah. I had another one of my former players coached at East Carolina. He's Austin P now, and but
good size.
But in fact, Gene Nudo's son, Jack. But Revel we're saving the best of my guys for last. This kid's good. He's long, he's athletic, and he's a weapon, on defense. He actually can do a lot of things. He's versatile. He's plays hard, which I like. He's athletic. He's fiery. He's very competitive. He's sometimes a little hyper, and he can get a little over aggressive sometimes. But he can play multiple roles in the secondary. He's 6'2", and about 190 pounds. And that's a verified 6'2", 6020. So that's verified. And it's not the media guide type stuff. The media lists with 6'3", but he's not that big, but he is big.
6'2" is good enough.
Yeah, he's a JUCO transfer from Lewisburg College, and he's become a playmaker. And he's a name that I think we're gonna hear something about. Okay, he uses his length extremely well to disrupt timing, on route releases. He's got a smooth, deliberate back pedal. He keeps his cushion and times his transitions to stay connected throughout the route and man coverage. Very patient, rarely out of position, and he's quick to break on the ball and get into stress that throwing lane and close those windows when he's playing zone. And he is very, very fluid when it's time to flip his hips and go vertical. No problems. The transitions are as seamless as you can find, which is very interesting because he's such a quick player as well. He attacks through the hands of receivers, and he has the playmaking ability to take it to the other way. He's 12 pass breakups in 2023 were, I think, ranked in the top 10 among all FBS corners. He can get to the high point and excels on those 50-50 balls. Very solid run defender. This is another thing, too. This is a kid, he's not afraid to mix it up against the run. He can avoid blocks or punch through stock blocks to come off and make tackles on the perimeter. He can be a very physical tackle. He explodes into tackles with quick gather and drive. He can take a ball carrier off his feet with very good technique. A definite contact football player, as we used to say in the old days, and somewhat of a throwback in a lot of ways. He actually aligns inside the box at times, showing some nickel. Excellent lateral agility to make plays against the run and to get into the alley. He has big nickel possibilities, and he could project a safety. his size and tackling ability are really something to see as a corner safety type player. He's listed as a corner, and that's what he played, and that's where he's going to make his money probably. But he can do a lot of things. I mean, his versatility. Negative, he gets a little too physical at times. He can grab you on route breaks. He needs a little more variety in his press man. He gets a little too involved with the jam, a lot of two-hand jams, and sometimes doesn't find the ball because he's beating up on some receiver. And he can be prone to penalties as a result. But he can really take on a wide receiver, and he better be good at getting off the line because he's going to make it difficult when he's in a press. But again, he's got some. He can't be too grabby, and he's going to have to cool his jets a little bit to adjust to NFL play, because there's some things he won't be able to get away with in the NFL, and he's going to have to learn to be a little more coy in his press technique. But I think that's something you can coach, and I think this kid's going to be a very good player.
All right. Siobhan Revel from East Carolina. And we're going to wrap it up with 3 non-FBS players. So Hayden is going to talk about a couple of corners and a safety. We're going to start with Kendall Bowler from Florida A&M. So get to it. What do you like about Kendall Bowler, Hayden?
Yeah, so actually the corner I'm going to focus on more is going to be Robert McDaniel. He's a corner. He plays nickel for Jackson State. I mean, if you're a fan of HBCU football, let me take a step back real quick, talking about Kendall Bowler, Robert McDaniel. I love watching HBCU football. I mean, like, they have such a tight-knit fan base that just loves HBCU football. They're so passionate about it. The energy around HBCU football is incredible.
And the halftime shows are amazing.
What's that now?
And the halftime shows are amazing.
And the halftime shows are amazing. I mean, if you've never been to a HBCU football game before, I highly recommend it. It's an experience.
Me too.
Absolutely should check it out. But Robert McDaniel is going to be on your list of must-watch players from the HBCU this year. He's been all over the college football landscape. He actually started his career at Jackson State in 2019, ended up transferring to JUCO. He played at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, and then played these past 2 seasons at Alcorn State before transferring back to Jackson State this offseason for his final year. So started off at Jackson State. He's going to finish his career at Jackson State, at least his college career. He's listed at 6'2", 207 pounds. He possesses length. Their defensive scheme is a little bit funky. It's almost like it's a 3-high safety scheme on first glance, but they play it more like a 4-2-5. They play quarters behind it. It's a little funky. You should definitely check it out for yourself. He typically aligns as the nickel, but shows the ability to play safety as well. He bumps out at corner a little bit, and you can tell immediately that he's the most athletic player on the field in almost every game that he plays in. He has great block destruction skills with a swift shuck and breaks down on the ball carrier in a hurry. He shows impressive off-man skills with flat-footed technique and hip fluidity to turn and run with receivers downfield. He's also a violent tackler and looks to demolish receivers when coming downhill. There's still a couple things that I need to see from him. He plays a little out of control at times, which causes him to lose his balance, especially when breaking downhill, breaking down to make a tackle. I'd also like to see him increase his physicality when taking on stock blocks and blocks from the line of scrimmage. Obviously, like all of these players, we're going to have to see if he can still do this at a higher level of football. HBCUs being in the FCS level, so a step down from the FBS of the bigger schools that you think of. But I think when you match the athletic profile, the size, the instincts from this player, he's a guy that you have to write in bold coming out of the HBCU this year. I'm really excited to see what he does.
And then the final player is Wisniewski, the safety from North Dakota State. I guess it wouldn't be a show talking FCS football without talking about North Dakota State. And he's coming back from a foot injury, I hear, so he should be okay. But he led the FCS with 8 interceptions last year or so, and he's a big kid too.
Yeah, not to mention he actually, not just the FCS, he led all of Division I football in interceptions last year. So this is a guy we absolutely have to keep on our radar. I mean, he's been the man since stepping on campus at North Dakota State during the COVID season. And if you know anything about North Dakota State football, they got a lot of dudes there, and he's like the guy that they got right now. He's played in 47 games from North Dakota State, entering his final collegiate season. He looks to help North Dakota State get back to the FCS championship. He has one of the most impressive seasons by a collegiate football player in 2023. We just talked about, he had 8 interceptions, which was, like we talked about, it was the most in Division I football. He had 13 PBUs. He had a forced fumble, 92 tackles, and he's going to be looking to match that production in 2024. The 3 seasons before that, he actually played linebacker. So this was his first season as kind of a full-time DB, and that's the production that you have. you definitely have to keep an eye on this guy. He's got a massive build for a safety, which is not surprising considering that he was a linebacker in the past. He's 6'4", 218 pounds. He definitely looks the part when you turn on the tape. He typically aligns as their boundary safety. They utilize a multitude of 1-high and 2-high coverages. Fluid athlete. He's got impressive click and close ability and closes space with receivers in a hurry. He's not afraid to tackle when in the box or in space. It will lay the hammer to knock offensive players to the ground. He makes some tackles at the line of scrimmage where I felt like felt the running back's pain. He lays the hammer for sure. No kidding on that. He's got excellent instincts matched with ball skills. He utilizes his length to pluck the ball out of the air. Now, I know, like I talked about a couple times, he does lay the hammer as a tackler. Still needs to fix some things from a tackling standpoint in terms of his form. He dives unnecessarily, sometimes lunges when he's not needed or when he doesn't need to. Despite the big hits in games, has to work on that just a little bit. He also doesn't possess elite range from depth. He was protected a lot by a lot of 2-high coverages and rolling down in 1-high looks. Didn't play a lot of 1-high deep safety. I would say after watching the film that Wisniewski is a little bit less of a projection than the other guys we're talking about today. I would be really surprised if he was not a draft pick. And he's going to be able to play the big nickel position, down safety, potentially high safety and 2-high looks at the next level. And even if he needs some development, he's the ideal special teams player when you look at a lot of his traits, his characteristics, and with hhis skill set. I fully expect teams to keep an eye on him this season as he enters his last season of college football.
Before we wrap it up, because last week we talked about the offense, and again, it was wide open as far as not just Group of 5, but FCS and all the other divisions. So anything can happen as far as any player can come from anywhere in 1 year. But regarding the top prospects, is there any other player that we did not cover that is somebody that people are going to have to keep an eye on for the draft next season? Or do you believe we've covered most of those guys? Anybody that pops into your head to go, oh, yeah, don't forget this guy is going to be, this guy's definitely draftable, or we pretty much covered it all, right?
Well, I'd say so. I think there's probably a lot of guys in different positions that, I don't know who we, the ones, the shows I was on, we kind of scratched the surface, but some of the other ones you did, I'm sure you got some guys that, I'm sure there's other guys we could talk about. I've been stacking these defensive tackles, and, there's like this is a year where there's some really, really nice players. I know we talked about Hemingway. I remember talking about him, Tyleek Williams, Caldwell, Alexander from USC, Nolan from Texas A&M, Sanders, Brinson from Georgia, obviously Deion Walker, Kenneth Grant, Dante Corleone. It's a really good year for defensive tackles.
Sure. I know we've talked about a couple different conferences in the past and stuff. Obviously, it's going to be really hard, especially when we're doing one player, per position group, or maybe 2 players per position group. You could have a whole episode just talking about Ohio State this year,
right?
Or some of those top schools like Georgia. So definitely hard. I feel like with the guys that we hit, a lot of them are going to be guys we'll be talking about next year in April. So I feel like we did a great job.
When we got away from the Power 5 teams, it got a little, thin. And so, we didn't necessarily talk about the greatest, highest draftable guys. We talked about some unique guys, some guys that are interesting, and some guys that have a chance. And so I'm sure there's some guys we left out, but because, there's going to be 200 and some 275 drafted, and another bunch of quality.
No, I was just talking about FCS. I was talking about FCS. And,
okay.
Yeah, because
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Oh no,
I misunderstood.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
why I didn't know if there was, because I know we only talked about a couple of quarterbacks, and most of the guys are going to be more than likely, you would guess, skill position players, but that's not always the case. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any diamonds in the rough, FCS guys or anybody else that maybe we just didn't cover because hey, that was the third quarterback or the third running back, or it could be somebody on defense. But you think we pretty much covered all of the lower level guys that when it comes to like December, whatever, a player isn't going to
guys that are going to be most likely draftable. I mean, just looking, I've got the list up right now. I'm looking at it. There's a kid from Alabama A&M, for example, that is probably a late round pick. Carson Vincent was a big, athletic tackle, left tackle type. So you just go down the list. There's a bunch of guys, from that FCS level. There's
okay.
That
no Cooper Kupps this year,
as far
though,
as being top picks. I think we've covered most of the guys I think we've covered all the guys that would be considered, definite draft picks.
Speaking of Cooper Kupp, there is actually a receiver out at Eastern Washington right now who's got a shot this year. I'm not saying that he's going to be Cooper Kupp. Last name is Chisholm. He's legit. He's a guy that, I can't talk about him too much because I haven't watched enough of his tape, but he's got a real shot.
He's an underclassman, isn't he?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's an underclassman.
We'll see if he sticks there. He probably won't. He'll end up in the FBS next year.
Could be.
So,
because that's one of the things you're looking at with, and you know what? Colleges, the amazing thing about colleges now is you could do a whole thing on scouting. They're hiring personnel departments in Power 5 schools. I mean, they're literally hiring personnel director, scouts, because they are doing the same kind of thing the NFL teams are doing. They're scouting the other teams for potential NIL transfer type guys, and they're figuring out how they're going to spend their money, their NIL money, to bring in some of these players that go into the portal. So it's a whole nother world. So you get a kid that's a junior FCS kid, or even a kid that's at one of the mid-major teams that is looking to go somewhere else, and he has an unbelievable year. He can make some money, and there are personnel people in their offices at these schools that are involved in that, making those decisions as to where they're going to put their resources. So it's an amazing dynamic right now as far as what's happening in the major college football, the Power Four, if we want to call it that. So
who was the top pick in this past draft from the lower levels? I think I have it here. You guys want to guess?
Get out the Ourlads review.
Yeah, I've got the Ourlads draft review guide.
Might have been
available
McCormick.
right now at ourlads.com. So I cheated. So I think I know who it is. You want to guess, Hayden?
Is it Mason McCormick? I'm trying to think who would have gone ahead of him.
I don't think so. Mason McCormick. Where did he go? What round? Oh, he went into fourth round. The guy I'm thinking about went in round 3.
Round 3, huh?
Okay, I gotta find the draft here.
Bears, Chicago Bears.
Who did Chicago grab?
Kid from Yale, offensive lineman.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Amageji, or whatever. I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There you go. So there it is. I think he was the top guy, I believe. Yeah,
he was.
So round
I just
3.
cruised it real quick. I couldn't find anybody else.
We didn't. We didn't talk about any Ivy Leaguers, did we?
I don't think
no
so.
Ivy Leaguers. I talked about a couple guys who transferred up from Ivy League in previous shows, but not today.
Okay. Anybody in the Ivy League stick out, or no? I guess not.
Well,
so far,
let's see. Princeton. I don't see. I'm going through the list right now, and the list doesn't really have. There's no Princetons. Okay, let's see.
Princeton, man, I don't remember the last time a kid.
No, it's not looking good for the Ivy League this year.
All right. Well, hey, that's the great thing about the fact that this is early on in the process, and what you guys were alluding to. By the way, Poppin' Fish. You're welcome. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is the fact that this is just the beginning. So the very, 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 very beginning. We're a month before the season begins. And this is really more of draft talk. But, of course, this is a lot to do with what's going to take place this season in college football. So we're going to be doing this in depth every week. And that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a bunch of different videos here on the channel. All of our scouts are going to have individual videos that they're going to be talking about players and all sorts of cool scouting analysis on these guys and what they project for the next level. And of course, it's going to have, to me, I think it matters too when you're just handicapping or just trying to find out how a team's going to be this season in college football. So that's why these videos are just really cool. And you want to check us out here, subscribe to the channel. We just showed you the draft review guide that just came out a short while ago from the 2024 NFL draft. So check that out. And if you still haven't picked up the draft guide, pick it up. So you can pick up the draft guide, the draft review guide. We're going to have a whole lot of content here on the channel. Matter of fact, I have my first preview for 2024. I'm going to be interviewing Steve Marek, who covers the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I'm going to be doing the interview here on Ourlads at 11 o'clock on Friday. There's a lot of talk about Nebraska this season. A lot of analysts seem to be high on the Huskers this season with Matt Rule. They think it's maybe the perfect time for them to take the next step. So we'll find out more about Nebraska. I have one of probably 25 interviews I'm going to have between now and the start of the season, talking to beat writers. Robert Mosley, who's the editor of GoDucks.com for the Oregon Ducks. I'm going to be talking to him in a few weeks. So, these guys are really good at what they do. And if you're fans of these teams, you definitely don't want to miss my one-on-one interviews with these guys. So check it out here on the Ourlads Football channel. And again, Hayden and John are also going to have, as I mentioned, a bunch of scouting videos between now and the draft. So many that I just can't count. So thanks for tuning in with us for this format. Things are going to be changing starting next week. Dave Syvertson, he's had it easy the last few weeks, so we're going to get him back working here again here on this scouting show. And guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you, Greg.
You got it.
Yep.
Take care, guys.